We're speaking to Mat Dunn this morning. He's a TV host, actor, radio announcer, originally from England, and he's now a Malaysian PR. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. How are you? Good morning. Whoa, almost said selamat pagi.
Apa khabar?
Okay, baik. All good.
Now, Dunn, we first heard that you came to Malaysia on a holiday.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then after that, you never left.
Yeah, it's a very long holiday lah.
How long have you been residing and working here in Malaysia? Actually?
Okay, I've been here since 2009. Originally I came here as a holiday, but originally Malaysia wasn't even on the list of places to go on a holiday. So Malaysia was a transit actually from Thailand to get to Singapore. So it was a 3-week long transit in which turned into an 11-year-long stay in Malaysia. So yeah, originally that was how I originally came in the first place. And then started I was on an island in Terengganu, Kapas Island. So started volunteering, helping out there from 2009, 10, 11, 12. And then I bought a small little boat in 2012 and built a little hut on the island in Kapas and made that was my kind of living. So I did that for a few years. Then I got married in 2017. And then after that kind of came the whole kind of process of getting a proper job and a work visa and all these things and really staying in Malaysia properly. So I can say that I've been here now. It wasn't. I was never here unofficially, but I was here in those early years on a tourist visa. So every 3 months I'd have to go back out and come back in.
Mm-hmm.
But since getting married and whatever, so I'm now nearly 4 years on a proper work visa, and residing here properly in Malaysia now, hoping to get my IC merah nanti lah.
Really?
Hopefully lah. Hopefully. If anybody's listening lah.
Okay, you said Malaysia was not even part of your itinerary.
No, never was.
So how did you end up here?
Well, I was backpacking through Southeast Asia lah. So the countries that were in the list were Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and then Australia. So my flight to Australia, was from Singapore, and I was in Thailand. So it's kind of I had to come through Malaysia really to get to Singapore. And I was backpacking my way through down, and of course in those days backpackers, what do we like? We like beaches and islands and whatever. So speaking to somebody in Thailand, and they were like, well, if you're going to Malaysia you should check out Terengganu on the east coast, Perhentian Islands, Kapas Islands and whatever, because they're really nice. So I took his advice, came down to Terengganu, and it was just such a difference in culture and a difference in what I was used to backpacking in all these kind of really real beaten down places,
right.
In Thailand and whatever, which are full of tourists all the time, and heading to Terengganu and kind of stepping off the bus in Terengganu, and it was just I was the only white face that I could see, and it was kind of like normally when we step off a bus, a backpacker steps off a bus in a very touristy place, there's all people there pulling us, you want a hotel, a guest house, motorbike and all this. But stepping off the bus in Terengganu, it was just like cowboy town. There's just nobody there. And I was like, right, okay. I complain about these people that always pull us to book a hotel and whatever, but I kind of need them because I don't know where I'm going. So I sat down. I've got a book in my backpack, so I sat down, pulled out my travel book and found a place to stay.
This was in Perhentian.
This was in This was in Kuala Terengganu.
Okay.
The bus stop in Kuala Terengganu. So there was a small coffee shop there. So sat down there, ordered a drink, pulled out my book, found a place to stay in Terengganu. So when I wanted to leave, I went up to the counter to pay for the drink, and the guy behind the counter said, "Oh, the table next to you was already paid for your drink."
Oh wow!
I was like, "Wow, why?" And don't know. Ask him. I'm like, okay. So I asked him excuse me, why did you pay for my drink? He's like, that's our culture. We can see that you're not from here. You're a guest in our town, in our state, in our country. So, this is how we like to treat our guests. And that really took me back. And I was like, wow, I've been living in England for 19 years and nobody's ever bought me a drink ever. Especially someone who I didn't know. I mean, it's hard enough to get friends to buy you a drink, let alone just a stranger that you've never seen before. Mm-hmm. Obviously a completely different race, language, culture, and whatever. So that really kind of took me back and was like, okay, this is especially in touristy areas, you don't get that. You never get that, and that kind of really, although it was only 1 or 2 ringgits or whatever, but it kind of really took me back. Wow, that's a really nice thing to do, a really genuine thing to do. So maybe that was the kind of initial something that kind of made me want to discover more really about Malaysia and about the culture. so that really stuck with me for as long as I've been here. That was my first interaction or my first experience in Malaysia was somebody buying a drink for me.
So from Kuala Terengganu, you went to Singapore and then you flew back to Australia.
No, I lost my flight. I didn't lose my flight. I rebooked my flight a few times because it was 3 weeks. So I kept pushing back the flight. And then in the end, I thought, right, it came up to monsoon at the end of the year, monsoon. So I was like, right, I'll go there because I've got this flight. It'd be a waste of money to lose it. It was monsoon in Terengganu, so I went to Australia for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I flew back to England, got a small job, got some money back, flew back to Malaysia, and then went straight back to Kapas again. And,
right.
And that was once I flew back from Australia to England to get that job again. I knew that I was really heading back with the intention to just get a job, get some money for a flight, and then fly back and stay in Malaysia.
So you really like Kapas then?
Yeah, I loved it. I stayed there for 7 years. So yeah, I really did enjoy it. Obviously, and even built a small house there. Not really. Well, it was a 12 foot by 12 foot long hut. So I lived in that for a couple of years. I built out bamboo walls and everything.
Nice.
Built my bed myself. Had a shower, was a well, over a 200-year-old well that was on the island.
What?
So all these things, like when I would speak back to my grandparents and my family, like, and show them pictures of my well and my hut, and they're just like, and they actually thought that
the whole country was like that.
Exactly, yeah. My grandparents are 85 years old. They're like, they really did think that Malaysia people are still like swinging in trees.
Right.
And when I told them, like, I'm working on TV now, and they're like, what, they've got TVs in Malaysia? I'm like, yeah, what have they got on TV?
I was just thinking about your story about someone buying you drinks in Terengganu.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't even happen in KL.
No, it really does happen. And
KL.
it hasn't happened since. It's not something that happens often, but
Yeah.
I suppose that was just my luck, really, of being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And maybe if that would have never happened, maybe if
You
those
would have a
original
different
3 weeks,
impression, I guess,
exactly, if
yeah.
those original 3 weeks wouldn't have been so memorable for me,
Yeah.
I'd have probably just moved on to Singapore and stayed in Australia. So
Yeah.
it was really a combination of all these small things that happened along the way in a very short space of those 3 weeks that really, I wouldn't be here. There'd be no Mat Dan lah.
Yeah.
So
Why
That would be a shame.
Why Pulau Kapas though? Like, what attracted you to that small island?
Okay. I mean, no, I've got nothing wrong with Perhentians and Redang, but they are very touristy and built up. Kapas in those days was still very off the beaten track, and it still wasn't very overpopulated with tourists. And it was that feeling of just everybody on the island, including like me, outsiders, non-locals who were tourists there, and the locals who were working there. It was kind of that whole. At the end of the day, we'd make a campfire on the beach, and everybody from all the different little chalets and resorts would all huddle together in the same place. It was a real kind of family vibe
Right.
that was going on there, which was. And for me, Kapas was one of the first places that I backpacked alone. Before that, I was always with somebody, a friend or whatever. But Kapas was the first place that I was actually on my own. So when you kind of found that kind of family kind of vibe, and that real like everybody's in the same boat, and we're all friends, and we're all helping each other out, kind of family feeling. It was a nice kind of comforting place to stay. So yeah, all these small things really, they just helped along the way. But Kapas was it was a really, because I never went to university. I left school at 17, worked until 18 and a half, a year and a half, and then went backpacking. So those my kind of character building years of the university years and whatever were spent on Kapas from 19 until 25. I was on Kapas, which is a 3 kilometre by 1 kilometre long island with about 7 or 8 resorts there, and in the monsoon there's about less than 20 people there. So they were my character building years were really spent on Kapas. So yeah, the Mat Dan you see today would have been very different. I mean, I turned down a helicopter engineering job apprenticeship in the UK so I could work in a clothes shop. That was like the kind of the stupidity of me in my youth before. And my parents only found that out when I was here about 4 or 5 years ago. They found out that I actually turned that job down. I told them I didn't get it, and they were like, "What? Like, what?" Like, they rang me up. They're like, "You lie." I'm like, "What? What's going on? Like, what? Like, you told me you never got that job." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, helicopter engineering." I'm like, "Oh, you found out in the end." Eh? But I said, well, I mean, if I would have taken that job, I would never have been here. You'd now never have a grandson.
Yeah.
So it would have all been very
Yeah.
different. But it was quite funny that when I was on Kapas, first year I was on Kapas, I met these guys and they were helicopter engineers living down in Kerteh, and they knew the company that I turned down the job for. So then I'm like, so if I did work for them, I could have ended up in Terengganu anyway. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, everything happens for a reason.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason.
So, what were some of the challenges then for you to be in this remote island, kind of deserted island on your own in the early days here in Malaysia?
I mean, those days I never had a iPhone, smartphone. It was all still emails, internet cafes, and emails. It just goes to show how far technology has come in such a short space of time. So it would be once a week, head back to the internet cafe, a long email to mum and dad. And I'm never really good at reading emails. They'd send me a long email, I kind of read it, and then okay. So that was the kind of the challenges in the early days, was that communication back home was quite difficult. Money was always quite difficult, but being on Kapas, I had my volunteering job there, so the money which I had in my account was going down, but at a very slow rate. Because backpacking, a lot of people think that backpacking is cheap, but it's not. It's actually very expensive, because you're paying for accommodation every day of the year, I suppose. So once I kind of found a place where I could stay for free, eat for free, live for free, it did make it a bit easier. And then challenges, of course, in terms of culture, in terms of, foods, it's a whole different region. But by that time, I've kind of been a bit used to the diet and the palate of the Asian palate. I've kind of been getting used to it a bit. But again, Malaysia, if you compare it to Thailand, the diet is very different. It's, our flavours. There are some similar things, but there are also some very different things in terms of, especially in Terengganu, things like keropok lekor, budu, and all these very strange things. I'm kind of like, in the early days, I couldn't even, what the hell is that kind of thing? Durian, like, what the hell is this? I mean, but in the end, those things kind of, now I love durian, but in the beginning, it was kind of like, what is this? I can't eat this, like rotting flesh kind of thing. And that's now my dad came here. They were here in 2015, I think. I mean, they come every year, but in 2015, he finally tried some durian. He didn't enjoy it.
It takes a while.
It's an acquired taste.
Yeah, according to Riz, it takes 3 tries.
I think it might take a few more than 3 tries.
More than 3.
Yeah.
It might take a few more than 3.
I still don't like it. I'm sorry. It's
come
not my
on.
thing. Yeah, and I'm Malaysian. I don't think it.
Well, so like you said, your formative years were spent in Terengganu. That's why you have such a strong Terengganu accent, because you learned Malay from the local boys.
Yeah, I learned on the island. I learned with the locals. I never picked up a book and a pen and paper and wrote anything down. Just learned from picking it up from people around me. So that was why.
Yeah, how long did it take for you to sort of pick up the language?
Properly
to be like confident enough to have a conversation, I'm going to say somewhere in between 2 and 3 years, maybe 2.5 years, something like that. But now, I mean, even speaking now, there are still some things obviously which I don't know, and which I'm always learning it. And even in English, there's some words which I hear, which like, I've never heard that word before.
Right.
So language is a very interesting thing where we can always find new words or new phrases that we've never heard before. So I'll never be a native Malaysian speaker, and all these, like the peribahasa things, which I did one the other day. I did a job the other day, and the title of the show was Kuku dan Isi, or something like that. I don't know, what the hell does that mean? It's like kuku and isi, it's like you cannot
separate.
You cannot separate. I'm like, oh right, okay, and I ended up calling it paku and isi. So there are those things, and all these kind of like nostalgia things when looking back, especially around this time of kemerdekaan kind of thing, where you have all these lagu-lagu lama, lagu kemerdekaan, even Negaraku. I mean, I love the song, and I always, whenever I'm on the job, I always stand up and I always do the song, but I'll never have that kind of nostalgic remembering back to as a kid, the connection, the connection there. Even though sometimes I do think I do have that connection. But so I mean, to go back to the question, it took about 2 or 3 years to pick it up and be confident enough to have a decent conversation lah.
But why do you think it's important for you to learn the language?
I mean,
because most Malaysians, they know English.
Yeah. And I think that most English don't know another language, and that's a shame, because we are, everybody speaks our language, and that's why sometimes a lot of English people, not all, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them are why do I want to learn another language? Everybody speaks English. And that's a shame that basically nearly any other country in the world has to learn another language, English. But we never get that. We do get that opportunity, but at our ages when we're 13, 14, 15 in secondary school. And I don't know about you, but in secondary school, my French class was just an hour to mess around with your mates kind of thing. We never did any work.
Yeah.
So
you don't parlez-vous français?
No, c'est bon. Very little. Bonjour, c'est bon. Je ne sais pas. Very, very, very little. Never learned it. Never passed the exam. Didn't even take the exam, I don't think. But so and that was in hindsight, that was always a shame because the two subjects, which I wish that I'd concentrated most on in school are languages, modern languages, and music. And they were, in my school years, they were the two classes which would be the most messing around you could do. I think I held the record for getting thrown out of the class in the quickest. Walked in, hey, get out! Got thrown straight back out again. So yeah, I think I held the record in my music class for being thrown out the quickest.
So you think learning a local language connects you with the culture better?
Yeah, definitely. I am a very big believer in that. But because the way that I learned, but there's a difference in learning a language in another say if I was in England learning Malay, it would be very different as being in Malaysia learning Malay.
Yeah.
Because if you're in another country, like if you're in England learning Malaysian, you don't have that opportunity to test it out on local people. And I learned the language, to be honest, I never really learned the language in a learning language formal kind of sense. I learned the language. Malay is I've seen people have a conversation on their phone just going, huh, oh, okay. So I'm like, well, if you can do that, I can do that. Yeah. So I would, in the beginning, I would just kind of, I'd try because I think that's probably why I can speak Terengganu and why maybe I have a slightly better grasp of the language and the tonation of it, because I learnt Malay through, in the beginning, by just picking up on that tonation kind of, like, huh? Oh, like all these kind of things. So somebody would be talking to me, and I'd be there like, I wouldn't have a clue what he's on about, but he would think that I knew what he was talking about, kind of thing. So, and then it just kind of snowballed from that, where I'd pick up, in a sentence, I'd manage to get one word, and from that one word, I could kind of piece together what he was trying to say. But I'd always try and figure out what that word means myself, as opposed to just asking somebody what that means, because you can see, Malay is a very body language kind of thing, so I can see that, he's kind of like, aku. So I know after a while that, aku is me kind of thing. But that also was why I then learnt Malay in a very kind of kasar, or very kind of not so proper way, and I'd always have to apologize to some people. For instance, my future father-in-law, like, I'm sorry if mid-conversation I say something which is a little bit offensive, but that's just the way.
But in your mind, it's just normal.
It just comes out. It just comes out. And once I start talking, I can't really stop. So it just comes out. So I'd always have to apologize to people, but most people get it. I learnt Malay in a very informal setting.
Number one, they're already impressed that a white guy speaks Malay that well.
Yeah. So hopefully those akumu things can just kind of be looked past.
Yeah.
Now, do you go back to the UK often still?
Yeah, obviously now COVID, can't go back at the minute. Was planning to go back this summer, so probably around about now really we were planning to go back. Which is a shame, because obviously now with mum and dad back there, they're wanting to see the grandson over here, they can't, so it's very difficult for them. But yeah, we try and go back at least once a year. Parents come here at least once a year, but that might change now, especially with Zayn and with the other one on the way.
Oh, so congratulations!
This November, hopefully. Well, yeah, this end of this mid of November.
Wow, revelation right here, man. That's
exclusive.
Yeah, exclusive. So yeah, we're all excited for that. But again, it's hard for my mum and dad, knowing they can't be here this year, probably at the minute.
Hopefully by next year.
Hopefully by next year. Hopefully by next year. I mean, my dad's he's the kind of guy that he'll come here, he'll fly back after a 2-week holiday here, and once he arrives back home, he's already looking at book flights for next year. Which is difficult for me also, because it's like my schedule. He's like, when in the middle of August, you're going to be all right. I'm like, I don't really know. I don't really plan a year ahead.
How about you? Do you do that? Like when you go back to the UK, you feel like, I want to go back home to Malaysia. Do you miss Malaysia when you go back to the UK?
I do. Yeah, I do. I do miss it. But
Which is home though?
That's a good question. Which is home? I think, to be honest, I have two homes. I feel more like I belong here in Malaysia, but England's always my home, and I've got those nostalgic connections, and my family are all there. So I do have those connections which I'll never have to Malaysia in England. But I've built a whole life in Malaysia now, so I'm definitely more at home here. But I love going back. I do love when I'm back. But I always seem to go back in the winter. I don't know why. It just always seems to work out. I'll go back in the winter. So we were really planning this year. We're going to go back in the summer. We're going to go back for a month, 3 weeks to a month. We're going to go back in the summer. We're going to have a nice long summer in England. Because summers in England, if it's a good summer, they're really nice. It's light. It sunsets at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So it's really nice to spend time with family. Nice long days and whatever. But this year didn't quite work out. So.
Well, this year didn't quite work out for everyone.
For everybody, yeah, it didn't really work out for everybody. It was a whole kind of. I had good hopes for 2020. I was big hopes for 2020, and then it turned out actually.
2020's been weird.
It's been a strange year, very weird.
Now, we're gonna do a little test with you to find out how Malaysian you are. Are you more Malaysian than we are? So we're gonna ask you a few questions, and you can pass if you don't know the answer.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's get to our first question then.
All right. Okay. Well, I've been worried about this all morning. Okay. All right.
What is the name of our flag?
Jalur Gemilang.
Wow. Straight up, no hesitation. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you said
my heart's beating.
well, you said you visited all the states here in Malaysia. How many states are there in Malaysia?
13.
Very well.
Am I right? 13.
That's
Correct.
right, yeah.
And three wilayas.
And three wilayas, three federal territories.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna give you another one for that because that's just so good. Okay.
Oh, no.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, this one's a little bit more difficult, I guess. Who is the first Prime Minister of Malaysia? The first one. The one who shouted Merdeka.
I know this.
Merdeka.
It's not Tun Razak.
No,
I know this. I'm gonna have to pass. But you tell me the answer. I know this.
Tunku Abdul Rahman.
Tunku Abdul Rahman.
Yes.
Jalanta.
Right.
All right. What is a rafflesia?
Bunga Raya. No, the big flower in Sabah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
The stinky one.
yeah, the big stinky flower in Malaysia.
It's
in
a giant
Sabah.
flower.
Giant flower.
Found
my
mostly in Sabah. That's
Yeah.
right.
Oh, luckily you not take the first answer. Do you have to take my first answer or not? No? Okay,
It's
alright.
fine.
That was
It's
brilliant,
fine.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, you are Trengganu tourism icon.
Okay.
Right?
Oh my god, huh?
Can you tell us about the beautiful islands in Terengganu, but in your Terengganu accent? Sell it to us.
Okay. Pulau-pulau dan pantai di negeri Terengganu memang comel. Tak ada jumpa pulau pantai yang macam di Terengganu di tempat lain. Memang lain daripada lain. Nak tahu? Pergilah Terengganu, pergi makan kopok lekor, celup budu, berai bawah.
Oh my god. That is brilliant. I was closing my eyes trying to just soak it up, and I was like,
you can hear the waves in the background.
And I was like, that sounds very Terengganu. That's
Yes.
brilliant. My
I mean,
goodness.
even some of us, we don't really understand
No.
all these different accents from various
Suddenly I feel like
parts.
eating nasi dagang already.
Speaking of which, what is your favorite Malaysian dish?
I'm gonna have to say nasi dagang.
Right? Yeah.
Or if in Terengganu nasi lemak, tapi nasi lemak yang Terengganu punya.
What's the difference?
Nasi lemak Terengganu, instead of having anchovies and whatever, it's with a piece of fish.
Right.
Normally ikan tongkol, tuna fish.
Right.
And then with the sambal, it's a little bit different. It's a
Yeah.
little bit more, it's a little bit more bitter. The sambal a little bit darker in colour. So yeah, either nasi dagang or nasi lemak, tapi the Terengganu version lah.
Hey, you're gonna be getting an IC soon, lah.
I know.
You know, it's like nothing. You're so Malaysian, man.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. What are your future plans, though, Dan? Do you what else can we expect from you next? Are you going to?
Okay, future plans. Actually, we just for yesterday did the photo shoot actually for my new clothing brand. This is actually one of them. So
Wow.
batik.
Nice.
This is a hand printed batik in Terengganu. Hand printed batik shirts. So we're doing father and son versions. So we did a photo shoot, me and Zayn yesterday. So complete father and son. So he's got the mini version of this shirt. So
cute.
we're releasing them hopefully for beginning of September. They'll be out and ready online to order. So it's all online. And the brand is called Kaluku. Kaluku, Kaluku, which
what does that mean?
It means kelapa, but in Bugis. In Bugis, which is in Sulawesi lah.
Yeah.
So it means kelapa lah, but it just sounds a little bit more Bugis. It sounds a little bit more Kaluku. It just sounds a little bit more exotic lah. So that's we've got some like kurta shirts and these batik shirts, face masks and whatever. So the plan is now, obviously with the lockdown and with COVID-19, gave me a little bit more free time because obviously there's no shooting or no work like that. So it gave me a lot more time to focus on the business side of things. So at the minute, what we're doing is the keropok keping, the fish crackers,
right,
and the clothing brand. So hopefully you can see in the next couple of months, I'm gonna really trying to start pushing that out a bit more.
All right.
Wow, an entrepreneur as well.
Trying to be.
Add that to your
not a very good one, but yeah, trying to be.
Feather. Now, I mean, you've settled down in Malaysia very well. Married a beautiful Malaysian girl. Another kid on the way. One very cute boy.
Yeah.
Very cute. I mean, have you ever thought that you would make a life here, so far away from, 6,000 miles away from UK?
I do ask myself that question sometimes lah. When I think I try and put myself back to where I was 10 11 years ago when I first came here to Malaysia, and then imagine what I have now as opposed to back then. No, I don't think anybody would ever imagine that you'd build a home so far away from home. You see what I mean? But like we mentioned earlier, I do just believe that everything happens for a reason, and this was where I was meant to be, and Zayn and Deefa and the whole family here were we were meant to, somewhere in the universe we were meant to be together. So yeah, I mean, I would never change it for the world. I would never change it for anything.
Speaking of which, we were talking about accents just now. We can't really place your accent right now.
No, it's a very strange accent.
Do you get questioned when you get back to
Yeah. Especially like if I'm, go meet a few mates, and there will always be like a new mate in the group kind of thing, and they're like, no, he's, Dan's from here, and they're like, no, he's not. I'm like, yeah, I was born just down the road. They're like, what? Why'd you speak like that? I'm like, yeah, well, I've been living away for quite a while, so. But then but then I do have some friends who have been living in Australia for like 7 or 8 years. They head back and they've still got their English
British
accent.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, why haven't? And they're like, well, why have you got a strange accent but he hasn't? I'm like, well, everybody's different. I know people who've been here in Malaysia for 10, 15, 20 years and still have a thick Australian accent or whatever. Yeah. So everybody's different.
Yeah, so we shouldn't actually complain when some Malaysians come back from overseas and they have an accent, even though they've been there only for 2 or 3 years.
I mean, as long as you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but if that's how you talk, this is how you talk.
Yeah.
I actually now I kind of more, I don't have to think about speaking Malay. It's just it's more like a first language to me now. So now my English has started to improve, and I was like learning my English. Sounds weird, right? My English, but when I was like learning, like really having to think about what I was going to say in Malay, my English got so badly affected. And in one situation, I called up my grandmother on her birthday to wish happy birthday to her. So I picked her, hello, Nan, yeah. No, I don't want it. Put the phone down on me. I'm like, so I rang my dad. I'm like, why has Nan just put the phone down on me? He's like, all right, hang on, I'll find out. So my dad my dad rang me back in fits of laughter. I'm like, what? He's like, she thought you were a broadband salesman selling her broadband. I don't know, it's me. But yeah, so that just goes to show that obviously my nan even thought I was like some call center in India, phoning out to sell broadband. I'm like, oh god, my English is that bad, because I obviously can't hear when I speak English. I think it just sounds normal, but when I hear it back, I'm like, oh god, that is quite bad. But yeah, so I never really like listening back to myself in English.
But you know what? We love the fact that you speak Malay, and we love the fact that not just Malay, Terengganu Malay. It's brilliant.
That's my...
Now, Dan, what would you say to other foreigners who are probably thinking that they want to make a life here in Malaysia as well?
Do it, but get yourself into the culture. If you can, head out of the cities into the kampungs, find out what Malaysia is really about. KL, I love KL, but it's a big cosmopolitan city, and it could be a city anywhere in the world. So head out into the kampung, into the villages. Get out of the cities and really figure out what Malaysia is all about and immerse yourself in it. Head over to the East Coast, the islands. and the beaches on the East Coast, and enjoy the foods. Yeah, eat all the foods. Don't if you're gonna come here but still eating McDonald's and Western foods or whatever.
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips. It's probably not the place for you. But yeah, come here, immerse yourself in the culture, and I'm pretty sure that you'll love it. You'll enjoy it, and you'll fall in love with the place. And
what would you say to those people who are thinking of not going to helicopter engineering school?
Definitely go. Don't do what I did, because my outcome probably wouldn't happen to many people. Yeah, don't do it, because it's a very good job with a very high salary, and I'd probably be driving a Ferrari by now if I kept the job.
And you probably go to Terengganu.
And I probably would have taken the job in Terengganu. And engineering helicopters in Terengganu, man. But. There you go, everything happens for a reason. Just don't bring it up in front of my parents, please. It's still a very sore subject.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Okay, thank you guys.